Hello once again, chess enthusiasts. I present to you a problem here that requires white to give checkmate in 3 moves. Now, the key move, as has been observed by another chess follower, is not obvious by any means and came as quite a surprise to him. I found it very early on, but I have to admit, as I have already admitted in a video elsewhere, that I almost gave up on it because there was one of the variations that looked as though it cooked my idea. But, as also explained elsewhere, you have to be so careful in such situations that you don't give up too soon, because you could be on the point of solving it and then go off at a tangent and start looking at other variations that are meaningless. So I thought to myself, I'll come back to it in a few minutes and have another look, and I was justified, fully justified in doing so, because I found it, and I'll show you which variation as we progress through this video. Can you see the key move? This is the point. It is by no means easy to find. Just to give you some idea of what we're trying to do here, Queen c5 features in the solution, and it occurred to me at once that by playing here, we're threatening to come here. But by black coming here, we then run out of gas. It's very difficult indeed to see how we can make progress with these pawns stopping us. So just keep that one in mind. You can't play Queen c5 immediately, but you can eventually. Another interesting idea is to take this pawn here. And what are we doing with this? Well, what we're trying to do here is, if black takes back, we bring our queen in here, and that is checkmate. If the king takes, we would think about bringing it here. The only problem with that is that black has a flight square here. Just think about that for a moment. If black takes here and the queen checks, the king can continue to g4. So although an interesting idea, it's not good enough. And finally, another idea is to play bishop e2, with the idea of following it up with this, because the bishop here now covers g4. The only problem with that is that it's cooked with this. Check it out for yourselves, but it just does not work. The simple reason being that this pawn now is stopping white having control over g4. And of course, should the bishop take, the king is free to take the knight. So just consider all those points and bear them in mind when you're trying to find the key move. If any of you want to pause at this stage, I'd advise you to do so. Okay, well, that is the starting position. The key move is the surprise move, the waiting move, king a5. It's more than a waiting move though. It is in fact preparing. What is the threat there? Can you see it? With moving that king, we've vacated the square here. So the threat is to play here, covering the flight square d5 for the king, followed by that, and that is checkmate. Now, just assuming that we're in this position, he could play here. Again, bishop d3, flight square there, but that would indeed be checkmate. So that is the overall theme behind playing king a5. But it's not the only idea. Now then, let's look at black's replies to king a5. Better put this back. So we've just played, that's the starting position. We've just played king a5. Let's do it from queen side to king side. black has 6 replies. This is the first one. Okay, of all the legal moves, that's the first one, b4. How do we reply to that? Well, here, knight b4 doesn't work. Check it out for yourselves, by all means, but it just doesn't work. What does work, though, is this. Queen c5, which I mentioned earlier on. Now, what we're threatening here is either queen e5 or queen c4 mate. So, should he play bishop e6 to stop queen c4? Evidently, if you played queen b4, he'd interpose the bishop and muck up the mate in 3. So if he plays there, you take here with your queen, just like that. And that is checkmate. Alternatively, should he play here to stop queen e6, then, like I say, you just nip in there, and that is checkmate, remembering that the knight is covering f5. So that's variation number 1. We played king a5. That is the original position. King a5. We tried b4 and it doesn't work. What's next? Well, queen side to king side. There are only 2 bishop moves that work, and I'll give them to you. This is the first one, and this is why I almost gave up on it. Now, what is the problem here in playing this and following us up with bishop d3? Well, the problem there, of course, is that black can play here and scupper you. So how do you get around it? Bishop e6, in my opinion, proved to be the most difficult. Some may disagree with me, but I found it problematic until it all of a sudden occurred to me how to get around this little problem. Take a good look at it. That's after king a5, bishop e6. Now knight b4 doesn't work because of bishop c4. Can you see it? Well, it's this most amazing move here. He's giving up himself, and if you look at that position, no matter what black plays, it's queen d4 mate, because if he takes the knight, backed up by the bishop, checkmate. If he doesn't take the knight, let's just say he utilizes this flight square here on d5, it's queen d4. The knight nicely protecting the pawn and the queen nicely covered by the bishop. The bishop on e6 is blocking the flight square. That's the problem in this variation. That's why knight e5 works. So that is one way out. And if you notice, for anyone who's thinking, now what happens after f3, because this is a feature in this problem. Let's just take a little look at that. That is after king a5, bishop e6, knight takes e5. Supposing he plays here and thinks to himself, well, there's a flight square there. Well, of course there isn't, because queen d4 covers it. So queen d4 is the key move in mating on that particular variation. There's no way out for black. Just no way. So that's variation number 2. Let's have a look at the third one. Okay, so we've played king a5, and we've tried b4, and we've tried bishop e6. What about bishop g4? Like I say, the other bishop moves just don't work. You can see that the bishop wouldn't have any benefit at all in moving to those other squares. Because even if he tried to move to h3 thinking he can take the pawn and then the king can come in here, the knight covers f3, so that there's no benefit. But this is a tricky one, and you do have to be careful with it. Can you see the key move there? Well, knight to here doesn't work, because of this. And it stops bishop d3. Equally, you have to be a wee bit careful on this one that you don't fall into the trap of playing to here. Because again, he can play here. And you see, if you try playing queen b4 or queen e5, the king can take the knight because the bishop now no longer protects it. So you do have to be very careful. So let's just put it back. Can you see, after king a5, bishop g4, what white should do? I gave you a clue earlier on. Okay, well, the move in fact is knight takes f4. And if you recall what I said, that the king had a flight square here, now he doesn't, because that's occupied. Should he take here? Checkmate. Should he take here? Checkmate. Just to demonstrate it. And that is definitely checkmate. Should he choose to take with the king, then we just march the queen one further square to there. That's the difference. The bishop blocks the flight square. So although bishop g4 is tricky, it fails. So long as you remember that you need to play knight f4 there. That's the time when knight f4 really works. So it's not a lost opportunity, but you need to figure out when to play it. Okay, so we've played king a5, we've looked at b4, we've looked at bishop e6 to there, we've looked at bishop g4. What's next? Moving from left to right or queen side to king side. Well, it's king to here. Now the beauty of this, when I called it a waiting move, is quite simply that should black move to there, he's mated by force, because all that white needs to do is to play there. And then if he moves back this way, you just take the pawn, and that's checkmate. Alternatively, had he moved this way, we'll put the pawn back. Should be there. We take it again. Either way, king e4 by black or king e6, and he's nicely surrounded by white's material. He can't get out of it. So that scuppers him on that one. That is the beauty of playing king a5. You're just willing black to play king d5 and occupy that flight square, and then he's beaten by force. He can't do anything. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 out the way. What is next? Right, well, it's f6 or f5, but we'll play f6 because it covers this pawn. It may be needed for protective reasons. What do we play here? Well, now we do play the original intention knight b4, threatening bishop d3 mate. And as already mentioned earlier on when we went through this little variation, without giving black the opportunity of moving, here we can see he is moving. He's played f3. He's stopping bishop d3 because he has a flight square, but no, he doesn't, because that's why we play and when we play queen e3 mate. Done. There's, I think I'm right in saying, one more variation. Let's take a look at it. Okay, start position. Yes, king a5. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What about after this? f3. What happens here? Well, knight b4 doesn't work here. Test it for yourselves. But here we go again with queen c5. And this works perfectly, because what we're doing here is we are threatening the dual threat, in fact, of queen takes e5 mate and g takes f3. So, for instance, should he do that, then all that we need to do is checkmate. Equally, if he chooses not to protect e5, but instead to push or to take, it makes no odds, then of course we take here. So the moral of this tale is always persist if you feel that you're right. And that goes for in life as well as in chess. And I trust that you enjoyed that one. And after 15.5 minutes, goodbye for now.